Hi, this is Shondell Joyce. Welcome to my beginning painting class. This is my typical setup with preliminary sketches, color study, and reference photo. As you can see, I put the rule of thirds on the reference photo. This helps me to decide on the composition. I want to keep my focal point somewhere close to one of the intersecting lines. So right here is where my focal edge will be. To start off, I do a value sketch. The value sketch shows me that the darkest dark is in the foreground, those shadows. And then I do a color study to help me lay out my palette and to act as like a dry run or a dress rehearsal. So I make my mistakes on a small scale. I match the colors according to the values on the value scale. Once I've done these, I have a good idea of the method I'm going to use. So the first step is to get that blank canvas ready. I'm going to sketch the rule of thirds lines lightly using pencil on the canvas. And then I will sketch some of the big shapes in place. So I'm using the edge of my clipboard and I'm going to sketch with a sharpened pencil and a ruler. I'm actually using a blue layout pencil. Since I'm going to be painting with blue, this will easily cover. The rule of thirds, this is a square format. I'm using a square canvas for this painting. I'm using a rectangular photo reference. So I'm going to be manipulating it a little bit based on the rule of thirds. So this is a case that those lines really come in helpful. So the shape of my finished painting is going to be a lot different than that reference photo. First thing I do is I use a straight edge to make the vanishing point, or the line in the distance where the sky meets the water. Next, along that rule of thirds line, I'm sketching the irregular shape of the foam on the crest of the wave. I want to make sure that this is very natural looking, very irregular. And then I'm sketching the shape in between the foam where the splash of the wave is, and that little bit of water. Keeping the big shapes in the foreground, which helps further that illusion of perspective. And here are the two darkest darks. I'm going to give myself a straight edge and make a notation where those two big shapes will be. And that's going to help draw the eye through the composition. Now that straight edge in the foreground where the water overlaps the sand needs to be much stronger than the line in the background. This is my palette. I have cerulean blue, raw umber, white, cadmium yellow medium, and crimson. That's it. I'm using 3 primary colors plus raw umber and white. This is an acrylic palette. It's a basic palette, and I use it for 90% of the paintings I make. You can always add black or other colors to it, but it's more important to learn how to mix the colors you need than to try to pour it from a bottle. Plus, if you're painting in the middle of the night, you can't always run to the store to get more paint, but you can mix it if you know how. So I could do this from back to front and layer the things as they appear in the photo, or from dark to light. In this instance, I'm going to work from back to front. So I'm starting with the 1-inch flat brush, flipping the canvas upside down so it's easier for me to reach the sky, which is furthest away. I'm putting a layer of white paint right along the horizon. That white paint is really something to blend into. I dip the brush in water to loosen up the white paint and then dip it into cerulean. No need to clean it. The two will mix on the canvas as I'm painting, And I blend them together with this sawing diagonal motion. I wipe the excess paint off the brush and then methodically start making horizontal brush strokes until I blend from light to dark. And ta-da! There's the sky. That's called a graduated blend. It works a lot better in oil than acrylic because oil has a longer drying time. Next, I'm turning the brush horizontally and using the flat to make a straight line all the way across. This is my horizon. I don't want that horizon to take thunder away from the wave itself, so I'm going to soften it a little and lighten it. So I'm going over it with the wet brush. If you make a mistake, you can always dip a paper towel or a washcloth in water and lift it up. As long as the paint is still wet, you can erase any mistakes, which is what I just did. So I have a nice soft horizon. I'm mixing the color for the water. This is pure cerulean. I'm starting off with it close to the horizon. You get a lot of sky reflection. So that's pretty much the same color I used up in the sky. As I come closer to the shore, I want to make that color darker, more intense, and warmer. So the water in the middle is going to have a touch of yellow. This will make a beautiful teal or Gulf of Mexico green, as we like to call it in Florida. So this is one of the most beautiful colors of water. And see how it already creates that illusion of perspective? Warm colors come forward. Cool colors recede. I'm wiping excess paint off my brush. Now I'm mixing a little red in with cerulean blue and making an ultramarine blue. This is a darker version and works well for the shadow parts of the wave. So I'm creating some shadows in the waves in the background, and I'm pulling that blue all the way through the composition and using it in many different places. Notice the marks I make with the brush. They're thinner and closer together, close to the horizon, and fatter and further apart the lower down on the composition I get. This creates that illusion of perspective. Still using that same color, that ultramarine blue, to make the two dark blue shadows in the foreground. Now I'm just putting a little raw umber in with the same color and using it to create a shadow where the wave overlaps the shore. So that's raw umber along with the ultramarine blue. I'm going to toss a little bit of yellow into that, and then a little bit of red and a little bit of blue. So I'm neutralizing with the complements as I go and then lightening it up. This neutral is a sand color. And if you're not sure if you got the right color, test it on your reference photo by painting it right on top of the photo. If it blends in, then the color is close enough. It's a match. If not, you can adjust it accordingly. This one is pretty close, so I'm going to go with it. I just use the same brush, holding it horizontal, and make horizontal strokes. Now the same rule applies. I want to have my horizontal strokes closer together and smaller strokes closer to the wave. And then on the shore, I want the strokes to be wider, thicker, and darker. So that will help create the illusion of perspective. I'm going to go on top of these little marks with foam, so I'm not too worried about getting them perfect. That foam is going to wrap all the way around the whole composition. So to make the foam colors, I'm using a crappy brush. This is a round brush that has since lost its shape, which is perfect for this. I'm taking just a small touch of cerulean and putting some white in it and a little bit of yellow. So I'm making a lighter version of teal. And I'm going to start with that light teal color and use it as a foam color in the background. I'm going to mix 3 different colors of white for this foam. And this is the first one. It's a very light teal. This teal is about a 2 value. You can see it on the reference photo. It helps to curve the wave and make the crest of the wave come towards me. I'm putting some pure white right on the edge of that wave so that it looks like it's folding toward me. Next, I'm using the flat brush. I have a little bit of blue, a little bit of yellow on the brush at the same time. This helps to create unmixed paint, and it looks like there's motion in that water. Then I'm coming back on top of it with the crappy white brush with the foam. And you can see how that makes some motion in the water, and you get a feel for that wave in the distance cresting and falling forward. Back to the crappy brush. I'm dipping it in pure white to fluff up some of that foam, and using the flat brush to smooth out the stroke. So one makes texture, one takes it away. Next, I'm mixing ultramarine blue, which has some red in it, and white, and I'm making another version of a light color. So this is a transition color between that shadowy blue and the white. So this shadowy blue is catching some of the sky color. It's facing away from the sun, so it's not as bright. It's a shadow color. I want it to be a little different than the teal. The teal has more of the water in the foam. This is just a lack of sunlight, so it's a cast shadow. It's good to have different versions of white. We rely too much on white as a crutch, so having color temperature instead of white will help create more dimension in your paintings. So I'm taking this beautiful light ultramarine blue and heavily putting it into the foam in the foreground, and then taking it around a little bit into the foam in the middle ground on the wave that's cresting right behind this one. So I'm just putting a touch here and there to help give some shape and flesh out the foam. And sometimes I get excited and have to take the canvas off the easel. Going back to my 1-inch brush, I dipped it in water. Now I'm going to take some of that some cerulean blue, some cadmium yellow, a ton of white, and I'm making an ultra light version of the teal. So this is a lighter light. I'm using it on the very top edge of the wave in the background to help give some shape to it. I'm helping to shape the crash of that wave in the middle ground. Now it's starting to really look like a wave. I'm using it to help fluff up that foam, give that foam some dimension. Now I have 2 colors in the foam, and I'm bringing it into the foreground. So you can see how it adds some shape and dimension, whereas the ultramarine was just 1 color and very flat. Now with the 2 colors, it's really starting to take shape. While I have that color on my brush, I'm going to go ahead and use it as a color in the foam that's lapping over the shore. So where the water is coming on top of that sand, I'm going to make sure I keep my strokes horizontal. This is key. The sand is flat. The water is hitting a very flat surface, so you want to make sure that your brush makes horizontal strokes. That way the foam will lay flat on that water. Horizontal. Try not to have any verticalness to it. Otherwise, then it starts to compete with the wave. Thick horizontal strokes. And you can go very thick with your application of paint here. The thicker you go, the more texture there is in the foam, and the more dimensionality you get in your painting. I'm touching up with the little teal in the background, cleaning my brush. Now I'm dipping it in pure white. I'm using the crappy brush, pure white acrylic paint, and I'm making a lot of froth on that foam. So this is the 3rd version of white that I'm putting on the foam. This one is just pure white, and it would be the same as titanium white, which actually is a warmer white. Zinc white is cooler. Titanium white is warmer. This helps to create some texture and difference. You can see now that the wave really has some motion and action to it. So does the froth. Next, I'm going to use a toothbrush. That's right. I'm dipping the toothbrush into plain water, getting white paint on it, and I'm going to splatter paint some of that froth so it looks like a splash happening on the wave. The splatter is magical. It creates some lovely texture, lovely spatter, and will really create a sense of motion and movement in the foreground. I'm trying to limit the spray to just the foam on the wave. If it gets out of control, which splatter paint often does, you can mop it up with a paper towel. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I hope you'll join me on Monday nights online for past acrylic classes. See you then.